What's up, guys? Welcome to another edition of Power Core Productions and Podcastings. I'm your host, Jerron Harrington, back to hit to another video. And today, we're going to be continuing What If Naruto Was Trained by Dr. Strange, Naruto Mystic Adventures, Part 7. Now for the intro, we're going to keep things rather short so we can get straight into today's video, but before we get started, I do want to say if you like the channel, then please don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, share, and hit that bell for post notifications so you can stay up to date on everything that is Power Core Productions and Podcastings that is to come out now and in the future. Also, if you haven't, please vote down below who you want Sasuke's trainer or master to be going into the time skip. Remember, you have 4 choices: Dormammu, Shumagorath, Wong, or Loki from the Loki Marvel series. Remember, who you pick could change the fate of this story altogether, so keep that in mind. I'm going to take all of the votes from the various posts and various videos that have been out so far, and whoever has the most votes, that's going to be the person who will be Sasuke's mentor going into the time skip. So keep that in mind as the story goes forward. But anyway, without further ado, let's get into today's video. So as always, sit back, relax, and enjoy the show. After the invasion and the funeral for the third Hokage, Naruto would begin his journey with Jiraiya, the two of them on the search for Jiraiya's old comrade, the Slug Princess and the third of the legendary Sannin, along with himself and Orochimaru, Lady Tsunade. In the meanwhile, Naruto had also begun his training to learn the new jutsu that Jiraiya wished to teach him. A jutsu that was created by the 4th Hokage, one of his most powerful techniques, the Rasengan. Surprisingly to Jiraiya, Naruto learning the Rasengan wouldn't be as difficult as he thought it would be. All of that time that Naruto had spent doing meditating training and learning to harness his chakra, as well as his other mystical abilities, gave him much more better control than he had originally. This kind of control that would allow him to learn the Rasengan in a much more refined manner. He'd even be able to go as far as to get the first 2 of the 3 steps of the Rasengan complete. Although, his chakra control was not completely refined, so he would be stuck on the last step. But honestly, compared to where he could have been, this was actually the best situation that Naruto could find himself in the meantime. As he and Jiraiya continued on their adventures, Naruto would tell Jiraiya a lot about his sensei Dr. Strange, as Jiraiya wanted to learn more about what Naruto had been taught, as well as what magic truly was. Naruto explained it as best he could, telling him that in a sense, chakra was a lot like magic, at least in the principle of it, the combination of physical and spiritual energies to create a power as such. Although how it was used, that could take different forms. Jiraiya basically got the gist of what it was. You could say that chakra and magic and all of its various variants, they could all be considered different roads that all came from the same source, or so to speak, at least in terms of principle. Or if there were a better liking to it, they were all like different kinds of fruit. Fruit could be one category, but there were a variety of fruits within that category, like bananas, watermelons, apples, and so on, that all grew and came in different various ways and shapes, and were completely different in all form and fashion. The only thing that they had in common were that they were fruits. This was the best way to compare chakra to magic in that regard as well. Back in the Hidden Leaf, Rock Lee and Sasuke, as well as Neji, were finally discharged from the hospital. They had gotten word of what had happened during the Konoha Crush, Sasuke hearing about Naruto and his fight against Gaara. It only made him more angry. Of course, he couldn't take it directly at Naruto. He was still just angered with himself. He had spent all of his time training and preparing, and yet he lost to Lee. Lee was definitely powerful and not someone to take lightly. But it truly did show that talent wasn't everything, and there were areas where Sasuke was lacking. As for Lee, Guy still told him to take some time to recover, as he had used 6 of the 8 inner gates, and his body could definitely use the rest. However, he was very proud of his student, and Lee was proud of himself as well, for how he had performed. Not only had he defeated Neji, but he defeated Sasuke as well, a Hyuga and a Uchiha. It truly justified his existence, his way of being a shinobi. He was able to fight for what he believed in, and he was proud of himself for it. As for Neji, his fight with Lee opened him up in ways that he never knew before. While he was in the hospital, his uncle, Hinata's father, Heihachi Hyuga, would come and speak to him. The nephew and uncle having a heart-to-heart over the fate of the Hyuga clan, as well as Neji's father, Heihachi, who died. All the same, while the road would be long, the two of them would be able to work things out in a sense, believing that they could repair the damage that had been done to their respective family. All the while, as Sasuke had finished his recovery, he was heading out for lunch with Kakashi, along with Zabuza, who was bringing Haku since they were free as well. But when they arrived to the meetup spot, he was surprised to see that Kakashi was there earlier. They also saw Kurenai Sensei and Asuma Sensei, and they appeared to be on a date of sorts, although no one wanted to say anything. However, Kakashi would sense a certain presence, and Zabuza would as well. They looked over towards where a local stand was, and they saw 2 beings, 2 dressed with black cloaks with red clouds. Kakashi and Zabuza would leave Haku and Sasuke, and they would alert Kurenai and Asuma to what was happening. As they did so, it wouldn't take long for the 4 Jonin to come into contact with the 2 mysterious beings, and they would be revealed to be none other than Itachi Uchiha and Kisame Hoshigaki. For Kakashi and Zabuza, they had a special connection with these 2. Just like Zabuza, Kisame was a former member of the Hidden Mist, and the both of them carried the blades of the 7 ninja swordsmen of the Mist. For Zabuza, he carried the Executioner's blade, and for Kisame, he carried Samehada. Kisame was intrigued to see that Zabuza had survived, and that he had taken residency in the Hidden Leaf Village of all places. Really didn't seem like something a 7 ninja swordsman of the Mist would do, although he was in no real area to talk as well, seeing as how he was a part of another organization and had no longer affiliated himself with the Mist. As for Kakashi, he made sure to keep his guard when going up against Itachi Uchiha, the 2 of them having served together in the Anbu Black Ops. He knew very well what the young man was capable of, and unlike himself, he was a full-blooded Uchiha, and he already had a better use of the Sharingan. With the help from Kurenai and Asuma, the 4 would attempt to bring down the 2 rogue ninja. although they were only just barely able to hold their own. Zabuza proved to be the stronger of the two swordsmen, with Asuma backing him up. Thankfully, what Zabuza lacked in strength, he made up for with his knowledge. He knew a lot about Samihara, knowing how it worked and how it functioned, meaning he was best suited to counter it. However, for Kakashi, he would not fare too well against Itachi Uchiha. Despite not being born with Uchiha blood, Kakashi was able to hold his own using the Sharingan that he had been gifted. However, against an Uchiha prodigy, it was quickly shown just truly who was the superior in battle. Kakashi would warn everyone to close their eyes, as he attempted to take on Itachi and his Sharingan's abilities alone. Itachi's Sharingan eye would then morph into that of the Mangekyo, and he would trap Kakashi inside of the Tsukuyomi, a genjutsu realm in which time passed much slower than in the real world. Well, it was just a mere few seconds for Kakashi on the outside. Inside of his mental landscape, he spent 72 hours being tormented into submission until he was left mentally exhausted and unable to fight. However, before Kakashi could stand down, he was very aware of who Itachi was and what he was after. After all, Jiraiya, using his spy network, had gotten much information on the organization that Itachi had joined, a group known as the Akatsuki, and they were after Naruto and the Nine Tails. Upon hearing this, Itachi would move to have Kakashi taken with them, but before he could do so, Guy would come flying in at the last moment. His specially made taijutsu, which allowed him to focus on fighting by looking at one's feet and not making direct eye contact, made him a direct counter to Itachi. And with the threat of more Leaf Shinobi coming through, Itachi and Kisame would decide to retreat for now, leaving the village and continuing their search for Naruto. Naruto, in the meanwhile, was still with Jiraiya. They had gone through to various shopping districts looking for Tsunade. However, as always, Jiraiya would become smitten with the cute girl in particular, and left Naruto to his own devices. Naruto deciding to go to a nearby inn, he would just continue to work on his Rasengan training, unaware of the dangers that were closing in upon him. Back in the Leaf with Sasuke and Haku, they went to look for their senseis when they hadn't come back in a while. They somehow managed to find their way back to the hospital, where they found both Zabuza and Kakashi bedridden. Zabuza looked as though he had only been beaten up physically. Other than that, he seemed he would recover just fine, but Kakashi was completely bedridden and unresponsive. From the conversations, they learned that the ones responsible were Itachi Uchiha and Kisame Hoshigaki, both of those names having a profound effect on the two of them. Haku knew of Zabuza's past, and she was aware that Kisame was a member of the 7 Ninja Swordsmen of the Mist, an enemy who Zabuza warned that they may run into someday. And as for Sasuke, he was made all too aware of his older brother's presence and the treachery that came with it. But the two of them looked at one another when another piece of information came along, and that was that the two of them, they were after Naruto. And with that, both Haku and Sasuke would leave at once, the two ninja making their way to wherever Naruto was to get there as quickly as possible. After some time, Naruto felt as though he were getting the hang of the Rasengan. He had used the images of Ikone's spell to create a physical clone that could help him with the change in chakra form. He believed that by doing this would work in the meantime, but he felt as though he needed to get it down to one hand to truly master the technique and not take shortcuts. However, as he and his clone were working, there would be a knock on the door. The real Naruto would leave at once, while the clone would vanish into thin air. As Naruto made his way to the door, he would open it, only to be greeted by two tall shinobi, Kisame and Itachi. As Naruto looked into Itachi's eyes, seeing the Sharingan activated, he could tell fully that this was someone related to Sasuke. This had to be his older brother, the man that he wanted to kill. Naruto felt a bit nervous at this time. While he had trained and gotten very strong, and he had many options for what he could do here at this moment, he still knew that his odds of defeating two rogue shinobi of this strength and magnitude might be more than what he was expecting. But where was he going to go exactly? He had a sling ring. He could make a portal, hop through and go somewhere safe, at least to a far enough distance. Or he could potentially take them out. There were so many options going through his mind at that moment. However, he wouldn't have long, as a crystal ice mirror would appear behind him instantly, grabbing him by the collar and dragging him through, just as Kisame was slashing through with the Samihada. Although the minute he did, and he cracked at the ice mirror itself, it would be completely broken, and Naruto would have escaped. They looked back out down the other end of the hall to see another ice mirror. Haku would come, pulling out Naruto in the process, with Sasuke beside them. The two of them making sure that he was alright as they turned their attention towards the older shinobi. Kisame would smirk at this, stating that that was a Kekkei Genkai technique, and that he remembered there was a clan in the mists long ago capable of doing such a thing. But to think that he would actually find the user here, and that she was wearing Konoha uniform, she was probably with Zabuza. And as for Itachi, he would greet his younger brother, the two of them not having met for a while. Sasuke would activate his Chidori instantly, looking to his brother with nothing but hate and with anger. Naruto would warn him not to go further, but Sasuke didn't want to hear it. The lightning would crackle and form around him as he went racing straight towards Itachi. His only focus was getting the kill in at once. As Naruto looked at Sasuke moving towards him at blinding speeds, he could see that from the face that Itachi was giving, he wasn't going to move. He wasn't even going to dodge. That's when Naruto felt he had to help. He had to do something. That's when Naruto would ready his two fingers that held his sling ring. Then he would start to twist and move them. A tiny circle would be created in front of Sasuke as sparks began to emanate. Itachi had no clue what was going on here. As Sasuke's hand went plunging straight into the hole, a large portal would open, swallowing up Sasuke, causing him to disappear. Itachi wondered where his brother had gone, what exactly had just happened. And that's when Naruto would open up another portal instantly behind him, and Sasuke would slamming through. This time, Itachi only had a few shorter seconds to evade, as the arm of his cloak was hit, and he went moving out to the side. As some blood began to drip down though, Sasuke could see that he had done it. He had gotten the hit. He looked back towards Naruto, and Naruto would tell him that he understood what he was going through. He was dealing with a man that had caused him great pain, and he was sorry. But he had made a judgment. If he had gone through his attack the way he intended to, he wasn't going to hit it. Naruto would then look to Sasuke, and he would look to Haku. He would tell them if they were really going to do this, they had to work together. He wasn't going to get in Sasuke's way, but he would back him up. That was all. Sasuke begrudgingly looked at him and nodded as he turned his attention back towards Itachi. Itachi, however, would smugly tell him that he wasn't doing what he was instructed to at all. The last time they spoke, he told his younger brother to get stronger. And yet, what was he doing? Playing ninja with his friends? Learning off-handed techniques from Kakashi? That was cute. Learning how to use the Sharingan from a rank amateur. But he knew what he needed to do if he wanted to get strong. And if he kept playing around like this, he wasn't going to get anywhere. However, Itachi would be the one who was caught off guard once again, as instantly, orangey fire chains would start to surround him. Naruto, using the chains of Krakon from the clones he was able to make discreetly using his spells, would suddenly surround and hold Itachi in place. As he was held, Sasuke would activate the Chidori once more and would go rocketing towards him, looking to pierce him in the chest and finish this once and for all. The moment he made contact though, Itachi would burst into a pile of crows. Meanwhile, Kisame would be on the attack against the real Naruto and Haku. Haku would form a few crystal ice mirrors in distinct parts of the hallway, launching her Sinbun towards Kisame. He would be hit a few times, but the monster of a ninja would just merely brush them off. They were nothing but child's play to him at this point. Although his movements would be off just a little bit, Haku knew that in a straight-up fight, her crystal ice mirrors were only going to do but so much against him. So she aimed for specific points in the body, believing that at the very least, she could slow him down. And she was in fact able to do so. As his movements were off, they were only by a few seconds, but those few seconds could mean the very difference between life and death. Naruto, in the meanwhile, would summon upon him the chains of Krakon, as he would use them to bind and hold Samihara in place. However, the energy would start to siphon from the chains, and they would soon dematerialize. Samihara absorbed them, but the sword itself began to be agitated. It began to shake and to change altogether. Kisame would remark that that wasn't chakra it was absorbing, but whatever it was potent and it was dark. He liked it, and he wanted more of it. Naruto was surprised to see that the sword could absorb something like that. It had already been confirmed that the sword could absorb forms of chakra, but now it could absorb magic also? It looked like their situation was only getting from bad to worse. Not to mention the fact that Itachi had grown tired of Sasuke and Naruto, and he had decided to cut out the middleman. Getting rid of the clones, he turned his attention to Sasuke. He grabbed the only recently recovered wrist and snapped it once more, causing Sasuke immense pain as he kicked him against the wall and held him in place. Naruto tried to get closer to him, but Kisame would cut the gap in between them. Naruto would channel some of the Nine-Tails chakra. However, Kisame would swipe at him once again with his blade, absorbing the chakra before he could even use it. It seemed as though he was full of surprises, at least for Kisame. All these different types of chakras and power. It was definitely keeping Samihara interested. Their situation looked dire. However, the walls would then start to change into that of the belly of the toad. Sasuke didn't know what was happening, as he was being pulled in, as both Kisame and Itachi would stand back to back, before seeing that Jiraiya had now appeared as well. At the sight of him, the two of them agreed that maybe it was for the best if they leave, not wanting to get into a fight with one of the legendary Sannin, and they would make their escape from out of the window. Itachi using the black flame of Amaterasu to burn through and make an escape for the two of them. Jiraiya would keep everyone away from the flame as he went towards it, attempting to absorb some of it into a scroll and study it for later. As Sasuke was released and stepped back out, clutching onto his wrist as he looked at everything that was happening around him. He looked to see where his brother had gone, and he could not find him anywhere. Sasuke's pride, everything in between, had been wounded. He couldn't beat Lee. He wasn't able to do anything during the Konoha Crush. And now his brother, the one whom he had been training to defeat, the one whom he wanted to destroy all this time, his attentions were rather focused on Naruto, the boy wonder who seemed to have a new technique coming out of his ass every week. Just how long had the gap been growing between the two of them? All the same, Jiraiya was simply happy that everyone was safe, as he checked on them all to make sure that everything was alright, before bandaging Sasuke's hand. Eventually, Guy would arrive as well, and they had to make a plan on what they were going to do. Jiraiya and Naruto were still going to look for Tsunade, but Haku decided that she wanted to accompany them. Sasuke protested and he wanted to stay as well, but it was already decided that he would return back to the Hidden Leaf. Sasuke wasn't too fond of this idea at all. He knew that his brother might come back, and Naruto was basically the bait he was going to use to get to him. All the same though, Guy would chop Sasuke in the back of the neck, knocking him out, as Jiraiya would tell him that now it was simply time for he to return back to the Hidden Leaf, and that they would make their way as soon as they were done with the mission. Now having another person on the team, Jiraiya will allow Naruto to continue his training with the Rasengan, and Haku would accompany them to keep them protected. But also, she wanted to spend time with Naruto and see if he were okay with everything that were going on. Naruto was fine for the most part, and the two of them had some time to spend together alone. As they did so, Haku would ask Naruto some questions about his powers, his abilities, how he learned to do the things that he could do. And Naruto, like before, would tell of how he and Dr. Strange met one day. It was by chance, but from there, he had been trained under the Sorcerer Supreme. He hadn't heard from Strange in a while. He had no idea what was happening or if he were alright. He hoped he was, though. They hadn't seen each other in almost 4 or 5 months now, since he had gone and become a Genin in the first place. Haku was amazed to hear this, to learn about how Naruto was able to do the things that he could do. She also learned about him being the Jinchuriki for the Nine Tails. Naruto was a little worried though that she would end up rejecting him or thinking he was a monster, but she didn't feel that way at all. Fox or no fox, Naruto was just Naruto to her. And whenever they weren't looking from a distance, Jiraiya would be making a few googly eyes at them, as he was one to tease often. Haku would turn very flustered and red at the sight of this, and she wasn't afraid to kick the Sannin in the face. Jiraiya remarking that she kinda reminded him of Tsunade, just a little bit, with that temper. It wouldn't take long, but the three would eventually find where Tsunade was. After searching through shopping district after shopping district, bar after bar after bar, they would eventually find where Tsunade was, drinking her way after having lost all of her money. She was also known by another name, due to her gambling skill or lack thereof. When it came to making money, Tsunade was a good person to bet against, because she was, after all, the legendary sucker herself. Tsunade, half drunk, would be surprised that Jiraiya, of all people, would show up. Shizune trying her best to keep her master under control, as Tsunade and Jiraiya would sit across from one another catching up. Both Naruto and Haku just looking on at the two Sannin as they spoke. After exchanging pleasantries, Jiraiya would get straight to the point, telling her that the third Hokage had died, and that now she was being selected to be the next Hokage. This would get a chuckle out of Tsunade in that moment. After all this time, after everything that she had been through, the village would come to her with that kind of crap? Tsunade made it very clear how she felt about the title of Hokage, and how she felt about Hokage in general. That they were stupid, and that to be Hokage was a fool's goal. It was a waste of time. She would mock and belittle the title of Hokage, shocking even Jiraiya at her audacity. However, no one was more angry at that table than Naruto. Haku knew of Naruto and his dreams of becoming Hokage, of everything he had gone through in his younger years. She too felt a little upset to hear someone belittle Naruto's dream like that, something that meant everything to him. However, Naruto would hold in his anger. Training with Dr. Strange and Wong had helped him in terms of compartmentalizing his feelings and emotions, at least as best as he could. He would speak up to Tsunade, telling her to shut up and to not speak so foolishly out loud. Tsunade became angered with the young blonde, asking under what audacity did he think he had to speak to her that way. But Naruto would point out that a drunken fool like her, an old hag who hid behind genjutsu, had no right to speak or talk about the Hokage at all. He would remark that unlike her, they were men of integrity, who gave their life for something greater than themselves. Tsunade became even more pissed and angered. She told Naruto that he had no right to speak. He didn't know a thing about her or what she had been through. But Naruto didn't care. So that's my problem? Oh, what's the matter? You've been through something in your life? Well, boo-hoo, get over it. You impotent little. Alright, since you think you know so much about me, why you want to be Hokage so bad, kid? Because it is my dream. It is my dream to protect those who are closest to me. That village is my home, and I will defend it with everything that I have, like the Kage that came before me. You speak of their deaths, and you say they died a fool's death. But if you ask me, they had more life than you'll ever have. You are a disgrace to all shinobi. And the fact that you even have the audacity to call yourself a Sannin, it makes me sick. That mouth of yours is gonna get you killed, kid. You care to take this outside? I'd love to. Both Jiraiya and Haku would try to stop them. Shizune as well, but it looked as though there was no getting out of it. Both Tsunade and Naruto would stand out in the middle of the road. Jiraiya, Shizune, and Haku standing to the side. They were immensely afraid of what was about to happen. They had no idea who they should be more afraid of, Tsunade or Naruto. Tsunade would hold up one finger, telling Naruto that this was all she was going to need to win. Naruto would simply shake his head. He would tell her that if she underestimated him like that, then she was going to lose. Tsunade would simply tell him to do his worst, and he would. Naruto would use the images of Icon to create multiple clones of himself that would all go charging in at Tsunade at once. Their combat skills had improved greatly over time, and they were able to match with Tsunade for just a little bit before she started to dispel them. However, they didn't disappear like shadow clones in a puff of smoke. Instead, they simply vanished like a thin mist. They were clones, but they weren't shadow clones. For the few Narutos that remained, they started to use their Eldritch magic to create constructs. One Naruto in particular would use the Shield of Seraphim, creating the blockade of magic, holding it in place to block from one of her attacks. However, this was where Naruto got to see just how strong Tsunade truly was. As she used one punch, it would seemingly crack and break through at some of his constructs. This surprised Naruto. He didn't think that she was that strong, capable of even shattering magical constructs with just her pure chakra. That type of monster strength could be absolutely deadly and dangerous. All the same, the battle would continue, and the more it dragged on, the more Tsunade had to use more and more of her abilities just to stand a chance. Naruto would use the winds of Watoomb to blast her away from her current standing spot. He would use the chains of Krakon to wrap around her and try to slam her into the light poles and down into the ground below, while the original Narutos would still continue on with their attack of kicks and punches. Naruto even being able to show off the Shadow Clone Shuriken Jutsu in the process, a jutsu that paid homage to the third Hokage. Before she knew it, Tsunade was now engaging into the fight all of her own, and she was worried that if she did keep holding back, she might lose. But then, Naruto would use that jutsu. While he used his remaining clones to buy him some time, he would start the formation of the Rasengan. Tsunade was absolutely floored for a moment. On top of all the techniques he already knew, when on earth did he have time to learn that jutsu? She gave Jiraiya a stern look before turning back to already see that Naruto was blazing towards her, the fully formed Rasengan in his hand and outstretched. Tsunade would cock back her right fist, channeling chakra into her hand, as her fist collided with the Rasengan, creating a large thud and explosion, a small crater being formed between the two of them as they both were blasted back. As the smoke and everything else began to clear, Shizune, Jiraiya, and Haku went to check and make sure that they were fine. Tsunade had been thrown back against the wall. Her fist was a little bloodied and bruised. And yet, her fear of blood wasn't getting to her. She felt exhilarated. It felt exciting a little bit. As for Naruto, he crashed back into the ground and was laying there in another crater he formed when he hit the dirt, and he was slow to get up as well. Tsunade was absolutely amazed at his power. To think that a boy like that actually had that type of strength. It impressed her a lot. She would slowly make her way towards Naruto, and she asked him, did he truly believe in his words? Did he really believe that being Hokage was worth dying for? Could he truly stand on those words? Naruto would slowly rise to his feet with Haku holding him, and he told her that that wasn't his only dream. Rather, he had two. He made a promise to his old sensei that he would become the Sorcerer Supreme of this world, and that he would master all the things in magic that he could. Tsunade didn't fully understand what the Sorcerer Supreme was, but she could tell that it was something that meant very much to Naruto. And he vowed that he would become the Hokage and the Sorcerer Supreme, and he would carry those two titles with pride. Being impressed with him, she would take the necklace around her neck and gift it to Naruto. Shizune would be surprised by this gesture by her master, but Tsunade had seen the boy's resolve. He wasn't all talk. He had the power to back up what he meant. She would tell him that that necklace belonged to her grandfather, the first Hokage, and she was placing her bets on him and for the future, so he better not die on her. And Naruto bowed and promised that he wouldn't. As the group would make their way back to where they were staying for the night, Naruto getting some rest after his battle with Tsunade, Tsunade would speak to Jiraiya alone for a moment. She would inform him of what had happened when Orochimaru approached her just a few days before now. He wanted his arms to be healed. Jiraiya could see that she had been dealing with whether or not she was going to go through with it, but he could already tell that she had made up her mind. He told her that they could be back in the Hidden Leaf by tomorrow morning, and that Naruto had a special ability that she would have to see for herself. Tsunade wondered what he meant by this, but then Jiraiya also explained that for the meantime, they were just going to have to leave Orochimaru here, and that they would just have to make plans to go back after him after they reorganized everything. Tsunade agreed and everyone would get rest. As the next day, once everyone was packed and ready to go, they would be standing on the outskirts of the town they were in, before Naruto would close his eyes and focus, holding his hand out that contained the golden sling ring that he had been given, the one especially made for him to use in his world and his world alone. He would move his arms in a circular motion as a portal would appear, and they could see the gates of Konoha in front of them. Tsunade almost fell backwards. She couldn't believe that he actually had something like that in his arsenal. What type of power was it? Naruto tried to explain that it was really more of the ring itself than a power, but it was a bit more complicated than that. Tsunade almost smiled in that moment. If she didn't know any better, she could have sworn that she were speaking with Minato right now. All the same, everyone would make their way to the portal, and they would instantly be at the gates of Konoha. The guards would go to greet her at once, as Tsunade made her way back into the village. The people holding a ceremony and welcoming their new Hokage, with Naruto and Haku close behind them. Tsunade would go and would check on Kakashi, healing him of his mental exhaustion, as well as making sure that Zabuza was alright as well, as she had heard a great deal of him, and she also would give him praise for raising such an excellent student, this causing Zabuza to feel an immense amount of pride, especially if one of the legendary Sannin complimented him in his skill in raising Haku. As Tsunade would assume the title of the 5th Hokage, and would start to take action in helping to rebuild the village. Elsewhere, Orochimaru was not in a good mood. She had bailed on him. She walked out on him, and was now the Hokage of the village hidden in the leaves. Well, no matter. He was going to just have to get a new body, and he already had his target in mind. He would call together the Sound Four, and their mission would be given: to retrieve his next vessel, Sasuke Uchiha. But unknown to everyone involved, a being not from this world was on his way. A being who could change the fate of the shinobi world itself. And his impact would be felt for years to come. This concludes What If Naruto Was Trained by Dr. Strange? Naruto Mystic Adventures, Part 7. As always, if you enjoyed today's video, then please don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, share, and hit that bell for post notifications so you can stay up to date on everything that is Power Core Productions and Podcastings that has to come out now and in the future. Stay tuned for tomorrow's video as we're going to be continuing What If Deku Was the Son of Rock Lee? My Hero Academia Fighting Spirit, Part 7. Anyway, that's going to do it for the end of today's video. I'm Javon Harrington with Power Core Productions and Podcastings. Signing off, and I'll see you next time.